Hey, what's up guys, it's Dom from Hole Printing Inc. In today's very quick yet very exciting video, I'm going to be teaching you guys how to line up your shirts properly. Now this goes for t-shirts, hoodies, I'll be covering hats very quickly, pretty much anything clothing related. This video is going to help you center it. Now I made two videos in the past. Video number one with the heat press, how to line them up. Make sure you take a look at that video if you're using a heat press. Video number two, if you prefer to measure them on a table, I cover in that video as well how to do it properly so you have a better idea, because on the heat press it can be quite hard to center everything, so that's why we're most likely using the table method. Now in this video is going to be the easiest video I have ever made on lining up shirts after being years in the printing industry. My name is Dom, I own Hole Printing Inc. I've been in the printing industry for years. I've worked with many big corporations and I help you on your printing journey. Now let's waste no time and let's go right to the actual table. So as you guys saw in the previous video about the heat press, this is especially good if you're only using the heat press to line up your shirts. Now in the second video that I made on how to line up your shirt, we're basically taking a ruler and we're measuring. In this video I'm going to show you a simple way without any ruler how you can make sure all of your prints are centered and consistent. Now let's flip this hoodie around and let's start with the front logo. Alright guys, so now that your hoodie is flipped around, make sure that there's no creases, making sure that the hoodie is flat on the table and there's no creases. Before you center it, make sure you remove the humidity with a mini iron just to make sure that there's no creases, removing humidity and all that good stuff. Now you take your logo. Let's say this is your logo, for example. Now some people will just kind of place it and measure it and stuff like that. What we like to do, especially for hoodies, is this is like our center point, right? Want to make sure our logo is lined up to the center. But what we personally do for hoodies is we kind of center it. Excuse me guys, I'm filming this alone, but we kind of center it 3/4. So we want to go where the logo is like 2/3. That's like our center point for this, and this kind of lines up perfectly with this pocket right here, right? And also the seam here. So as long as you're kind of in that pocket area, in my opinion, for hoodies you're going to have a nice placement. So again, for hoodies, making sure 3/4 is lined up. For t-shirts, it's going to be the center. So once this is pretty lined up, make sure it's not crooked, it looks good. And after that, you guys will see here the hoodie naturally curves, right? We want to go where the hoodie is straight to line up on any size. So again, 3/4, this is where we want our logo to line up. So 2/3 of the logo should be after this line for hoodies. And for the actual, you know, left or right side, you want to make sure that it's where the hoodie starts to become straight a bit. You guys will see a natural curve here, become straight, and then it starts to curve again. This is going to be your alignment to make sure that you're properly at the good height. Again, 3/3 from the seam here, making sure 1/3 of the logo is going that side, or 2/3 are going that side. That's your center point. And alignment is going to be within this side of the hoodie where it becomes straight. So this is left chest placement or right chest, right? That's perfect. Now if you have a bigger logo, something like this, pretty straightforward, right? I go usually 4 fingers, 2 fingers, 3 fingers, depending on the sizing. I usually use just my logic when it comes to centering these bigger logos here. And I fill up as much as the hoodie as possible, because most of the people that want this big print want it to be loud, right? So I would probably do something like this. Use my hands as rulers, making sure my fingers are not moving when I'm moving them, and then I can adjust the logo however I want. This is for the bigger ones. For a medium logo, same principles apply. You want to make sure that you're pretty much aligned with where the hoodie becomes straight, right? You actually start where the hoodie becomes straight for these bigger logos, and you go down. So comparatively to a left chest, which is a bit higher, this I would bring it down, and the top of my print is going to line up where the bottom of this straight line is. Making it sound more complicated than it is, guys. Honestly, you just go by look. You make sure though you stay consistent, but again, where it's curving, it becomes straight. This is where I start my logo, and then from there it can even go a bit down depending on the look I want to have. You know, around 5 fingers would be nice. This would be a nice chest print, right? So this is pretty much placement for the front of the hoodie. Now if we flip it over here, guys, is the same principle. Let's say you have a small print, the person wants it just in the middle to be a bit low key. You can center it a bit higher, right? But it's going to be hidden by the hoodie. Most people don't want these small prints in the back of a hoodie anyways because it's going to be covered. In this case, if you never want your prints to be covered, you need at least 5 inches to 6 inches with ATC hoodies, right? So this would be for that, but most people don't use this. If it's, let's say, a print like this, again, you want to go lower for this type of print just in case that the hoodie starts to hide it. So I would do something like this. This would be my placement, making sure it's straight. And again, going where the seam starts to curve, this is where I'm going to start it for the back print. If I have a bigger logo, same principles apply. Where it starts to curve, this is where I'm going to start it. So you guys remember in the front, it's where it's straight that you place it, and at the back of the hoodie, it's where it starts to curve that your top of your logo is going to be. This is going to create a nice back print, making sure the hood doesn't cover it. Your hands are your best friend when it comes to side placement, making sure that everything is properly centered. You can also use your hands here to make sure you have the appropriate sizing for consistency. And the best thing is once the hoodie is done, if it's your size, try it on, see how it looks in a mirror, or ask somebody close to you to give you feedback on how it looks, right? Going back to the front here, just take into consideration that it's always better for your logo to be a bit higher and a bit more to the left in this example, right, then a bit to the right and a bit more down, right? Nobody wants a logo in their armpit close to their nipple, right? Basically, like, nobody wants that. It's better to have it a bit higher and a bit always more to the left, and you can never go wrong that way. Worst case is going to be a bit too much to the left and a bit too high, but use your logic, right? This doesn't make sense here. You want to make sure that you're pretty much with your 2/3, right, as I said, for the center point, and then you want to make sure that you're around the pocket area for hoodies. You're around this point where it becomes straight. For the back, it's a bit different. So again, for hoodies, it's better to be a bit higher and a bit more to the left than anything else. For hoodie backs, it's a bit the opposite. It's better in most cases to not be like this. You don't want to be too high. You want to be in a position where you're pretty much with the seam of the pocket. You can even go a bit down. So the seam of the pocket is right here, but I'd rather be a bit down on the hoodie than a bit up, because especially if it's like a phone number, a company name, you're not going to see it. So it's always better to be a bit more towards the downside of the hoodie. You can never go wrong that way. It's easier to do bags because once you get the placement, you leave it there and then you just measure, making sure that everything is centered properly. Let's move on to t-shirts, guys. T-shirts, same principles apply. Make sure there's no wrinkles. Use this to remove humidity before you place your print. Left chest. Place a left chest. Now this is a bit different than hoodies. We're going to go in the center, right? This is going to be our center point, making sure everything's aligned properly. So this looks pretty good. And then from there, here, it curves pretty much all the way. You have a slight edge here where it doesn't curve as much. However, this would be a bit too high, in my opinion, right? So you're going to center down using the middle of your logo as alignment. And then I'm looking for the point at the top of my logo where it's straighter, and at the bottom it's normal that it curves. So this would be my placement personally for a left chest on a large t-shirt. I'm around 3 fingers from the collar, and I'm centered here, and I have some nice space between the actual print and the armpit, making sure that it looks nice. If you have a different type of logo and it's made more horizontally, you can play around with this placement, moving it a bit more here or a bit more there, depending on the actual logo form. Again, this is just some general guides so you can have a better idea how to place everything. So this looks good, right? Center prints, very easy on t-shirts, making sure it's centered like this. This is okay. And then 4 fingers down should be perfect. Where it becomes straight is where you start, and it's normal that it ends off where it curves. Big logos, pretty much same principle. 3 to 4 fingers, that looks good. You can play it up or down. For bigger logos on the front, it's better to have it a bit more down. You guys get the idea. This would be pretty good, making sure it's centered. Moving on to the back now. Making sure there's no wrinkles, using this mini iron to remove humidity. Some people like have a top print. It's usually good to put it somewhere here, making sure you put a Teflon pillow so you don't create scorch marks on this collar when you heat press it. But I would say around 1 finger to 2 finger should be a nice placement for this. center it both ways, and you pretty much just align your logo in the middle. Some people want it like this, whatever the client wants, right? Middle prints. In this example, some people use the collar. That's okay, right, guys? You can do that, but I prefer to go a bit more down. Something like this would be my placement. I prefer to have it a bit more down than this. This can look a bit weird if the person is a girl for this example and they have long hair. It's going to be covering the logo. So I prefer to leave it a bit more like this, keeping them almost the same placement as the hoodie, but a bit higher. Center it like this, and you basically only have to center this, and as long as you have your placement, you can repeat that for all the same size. For bigger logos, same principle applies. Some people go right with the collar, right? You never want to do this, obviously, guys, but I'm pretty sure you already know that. Some people do this for bigger logos. This looks amazing, but you can also do this, right? Just making sure that it's more covering the middle of the shirt. Really up to personal preference and the client's preferences. So let's do hats. So this is a hat that was printed. Some people are going to align it directly with this line here, and this can be good, guys. However, depending on how the hat is, it might actually make it more crooked. You know, this logo is perfectly centered from left to right, so make sure that you don't just use the line as your guide. You want to make sure that it looks good on the person's head, so you can try these hats on quickly, look in yourself in the mirror or take a photo. And just make sure not always to use this line here, because it might actually make it off-centered. Make sure you measure from side to side. The up and down is really up to personal preference. You want to make sure, in my opinion, that it's a bit more down slightly, right? So you can see it on the person's head. But just FYI, don't always use this line because some of the hats are not properly made. Some basic tips and tricks before I end off this video. For t-shirts, you use this seam right here going down, and this is going to be your center point. And you can always go a bit more to the center of the chest. Is always going to be a bit better than closer to the armpit. That's my main tip for front left chest. Making sure that logo is centered with where the seam becomes straight. This is going to be perfect, right? For hoodies, it's a bit the same principle. You want to go straight down, but you want to be 3/4 this way, making sure that it's aligned with the pocket of the seam of the hoodie. And basically, if ever you're not sure and you have any questions, I have 2 other videos on the heat press and measuring them, have more detailed and accurate measurements. So it's really up to your personal preference, but hopefully in this video you can go back to production without overthinking your placement. Use these tips that I gave you and adjust them however you like, depending on your client's vision as well. Hopefully you guys found this video somewhat helpful. If you did, make sure to leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe if you're new. This was Dom from Whole Printing Inc. Make a print you'll never forget.